The withdrawal. Commander Thrace Kellyan stood on the bridge of the defiant horizon, watching the ice fields of Veridor 3 grow smaller in the viewscreen. Around him, the skeleton crew moved with practiced efficiency, their faces etched with exhaustion and something harder to name, defeat, perhaps, or bitter acceptance. All ships accounted for, Commander, reported Lieutenant Soren Vex from Tactical. 17 vessels in formation. Population transports have cleared the gravity well. Thrace nodded slowly, his jaw tight. 17 ships. They'd arrived at Veridor with 43. The colony world had been humanity's pride, a thriving settlement of 200,000 souls carved into the frozen wastes of a mineral-rich planet. For 12 years, humans had endured the brutal winters and celebrated the brief summers when the twin suns aligned just right to melt the surface ice into rushing rivers. They'd built cities under geodesic domes, established mines that delved deep into veins of exotic matter, and created a home light years from Earth. Then the Krillian Dominion had come. The Krillians were a reptilian species, their scales shimmering in hues of deep purple and crimson. They'd evolved on a world of crushing gravity and toxic atmosphere, which made them formidable in their pressure suits and utterly ruthless in their expansionist policies. When they'd identified Veridor's exotic matter deposits, essential for their quantum drive technology, they'd simply declared the system theirs by right of superior force. The war had lasted 8 months. 8 brutal months of asymmetric warfare, ambushes in the ice caverns, and increasingly desperate defensive actions. Humanity had fought with everything they had, but the Krillian fleet had been overwhelming. Their dreadnoughts could glass entire continents, and they'd made it clear they were willing to do exactly that if the humans didn't surrender the planet. So the Terran Colonial Authority had made the only choice they could stomach. They'd ordered a full evacuation. Captain Mira Ashton of the Wandering Star reports all civilian ships are ready for the jump to slipspace, Vex continued, his voice carefully neutral. Thrace turned to face his tactical officer. Soren Vex was young, barely 28, but he'd aged considerably in the past months. They all had. Send the signal. We jump in 5 minutes. On the view screen, Veridor 3 hung like a jewel against the black. The domes still glittered, though many were dark now, abandoned. Thrace could see the scars on the surface where Krillian bombardment had melted through ice sheets, exposing the bedrock beneath. Commander, came a voice from communications. Ensign Kira Navar looked up from her console, her dark eyes troubled. We're receiving a broad-spectrum transmission from the surface. Krillian origin. Put it through. The view screen shifted, and Thrace found himself looking at High Commander Scarix, the Krillian officer who'd led the invasion. The alien's scales were a particularly vivid shade of crimson, and his eyes, triple-lidded and yellow, gleamed with triumph. Human Commander, Scarix hissed, his translator rendering the words in flat, mechanical tones. I wish to personally witness your departure. Tell me, how does it feel to abandon your home? To know that your species is too weak to hold what you've claimed? Thrace said nothing for a long moment. Then very quietly he replied, We're leaving to save lives, High Commander. That's something your people might not understand. Scarix's mouth split in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of crystalline teeth. We understand survival. We understand strength. You humans came to the stars thinking you could claim them with your sentimentality and democratic ideals. But the galaxy belongs to those with the power to hold it. Veridor is ours now. Its resources will fuel our expansion, and there is nothing you can do to stop us. Perhaps not today, Thrace said. Not ever, Scarix countered. Even now, my fellow commanders celebrate your retreat. The Dominion grows stronger with every world we claim, while you humans scatter like prey before predators. Go back to your Earth, Commander. Hide in your home system. The rest of the galaxy is beyond you. The transmission cut out. In the silence that followed, Thrace could hear the hum of the ship's engines, the quiet beeping of consoles, the controlled breathing of his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting. Commander, Vex said softly, the Krillians are broadcasting their celebration across all frequencies. They're mocking us, sir. Calling this the Great Human Retreat. They're treating it like a holiday. Thrace turned back to the view screen, watching Veridor 3 one last time. Somewhere down there in the colony's central archive, they'd left something behind. Not by accident. Not by oversight. By design. Let them celebrate, he said quietly. Helm, take us out. Maximum slipspace velocity to Proxima Station. Aye, Commander. The stars stretched into lines of light, and the defiant horizon slipped into the quantum foam between dimensions. Behind them, on Veridor 3, The Krillians were already moving into the human settlements, claiming the domes and mines for themselves. They had no idea what was coming. Because humanity had a saying that the Krillians had never bothered to learn. Retreat is not surrender. It's reloading. The victory feast. High Commander Scarix stood in what had been the human governor's residence, a sprawling structure beneath the largest dome on Veridor 3. The humans had called this settlement New Anchorage, though that name would soon be erased from all records. In its place would be Scarhold, named in honor of his family lineage. Around him, officers of the Krillian Dominion celebrated with traditional fervor. They'd broken into the human food stores and were sampling the strange cuisine with a mixture of curiosity and disgust. One officer, Warclaw Threnix, was attempting to drink what the label identified as coffee, and immediately spat the bitter liquid across the floor. Disgusting, Threnix hissed. How did these mammals survive on such poison? They are weak in all ways, replied Strategic Mind Velroth, an older Krillian whose scales had faded to a pale lavender with age. Weak in body, weak in spirit, weak in taste. That they lasted 8 months against us is merely testament to our restraint. We could have ended this in days. Scarix wasn't so certain of that, though he kept the thought to himself. The humans had been surprisingly resourceful. Their guerrilla tactics in the ice caverns had cost the Dominion more casualties than anticipated. Their ability to adapt, to improvise weapons from mining equipment, to coordinate attacks despite being hopelessly outgunned, it had been almost impressive. Almost. The High Council sends their congratulations, Scarix announced, silencing the celebration. Veridor's exotic matter deposits will accelerate our quantum drive production by 30%. Within 2 cycles we'll have enough drives to expand the fleet significantly. The Dominion grows stronger. A chorus of approving hisses filled the room. And the humans? Asked Threnix. Will we pursue their fleeing ships? No need, Scarix replied. Intelligence reports indicate they've retreated to their inner colonies. They're consolidating, protecting their core worlds. Let them hide. Veridor was one of their furthest settlements, and we took it with minimal effort. It proves what we've always known: humanity's expansion was built on luck, not strength. When challenged by a true warrior race, they fold. Velroth nodded sagely. As it should be. The galaxy has no place for the weak. Over the following days, the Krillians set about transforming Veridor 3 into a Dominion world. They repurposed the human domes for their own atmospheric requirements, flooding them with the high-pressure, sulfur-rich air their bodies craved. They seized the mines and immediately began expanding operations, their heavy machinery tearing into the ice with ruthless efficiency. The exotic matter veins ran deep, deeper than the humans had known. Preliminary surveys suggested there was enough material here to power the Dominion's expansion for generations. Veridor 3 would become a cornerstone of their empire. By the end of the first week, Scarix had established full military governance. By the end of the second, the first shipments of exotic matter were en route to the Dominion's core worlds. Production quotas were set. Worker drones were assigned. Everything proceeded according to plan. On the 15th day they discovered the archive. It was Threnix who found it, deep in the sublevels of what had been the Human Colonial Administration building. The room was environmentally sealed, protected by multiple redundant power systems. Inside, banks of servers hummed quietly, their lights blinking in steady rhythms. High Commander, Threnix reported over the comm, you should see this. Scarix descended into the archive, accompanied by Velroth and a technical specialist named Circuit Seeker Myron. The room was surprisingly large, easily 50 meters across, and every wall was lined with data storage systems. What is all this? Scarix demanded. Myron interfaced with one of the terminals, his clawed fingers dancing across the human-designed keyboard with surprising dexterity. Records, High Commander. Detailed records of everything. Mining operations, colonial administration, scientific research, personal logs. Destroy it, Scarix ordered. We have no need for human data. Wait, Myron hissed, his eyes widening. There's something else. A sealed partition heavily encrypted. Military-grade protocols. Velroth moved closer. Can you access it? Given time. The encryption is sophisticated. More sophisticated than expected from a colonial outpost. How long? Scarix asked. Several days, perhaps a week. Scarix considered. The humans had clearly left this archive intact for a reason. Perhaps it contained strategic information, troop movements, defensive positions for other colonies. Such intelligence could prove valuable for future campaigns. Do it, he ordered. Break the encryption. I want to know what the humans thought was worth protecting. While Myron worked, the celebration of the Krillian victory continued. They'd begun broadcasting across all Dominion channels, showing footage of the abandoned human settlements, the seized resources, the complete and total victory. Propaganda ministers were already crafting the narrative. The mighty Krillian Dominion had driven the weak humans from yet another world. It was proof of their superiority, their destiny to rule the stars. On the 5th day of his efforts, Myron finally cracked the encryption. What they found made no immediate sense. The archive's secret. The holographic display sprang to life in the center of the archive, bathing the room in pale blue light. Myron stepped back, his scales rippling with uncertainty. I don't understand, High Commander, the technical specialist admitted. Scarix stared at the data streaming across the display. It wasn't strategic information. It wasn't troop movements or defensive positions. It was something far stranger. Blueprints. Thousands of them. Schematics for weapons systems, ship designs, orbital platforms, and technologies that Scarix didn't recognize. But what made his blood run cold was the metadata attached to each file. Project designation, Righteous Fury authorization level, Terran Defense Command black clearance status. Phase 1 complete, awaiting trigger event. What is this? Velroth demanded, moving closer to the display. Myron pulled up more files. It appears to be a development program. The humans have been working on these designs for years. Decades even, based on the timestamps. But none of these systems are deployed. None of them appear in any intelligence reports we have on human military capabilities. Scarix scanned through the blueprints with growing unease. He saw designs for ships that dwarfed anything in the current human fleet. Weapons that operated on principles the Dominion scientists had only theorized about. Defensive systems that would make even Krillian dreadnoughts vulnerable. This can't be real, he said finally. If the humans had this technology, they would have used it. They wouldn't have abandoned Veridor. Unless... Velrotha's voice trailed off. Unless what? The older Krillian scales had paled considerably. Unless they wanted us to take Veridor. Unless this was intentional. Absurd, Scarix snapped. Why would they surrender a valuable colony intentionally? Myron was still pulling up files. High Commander, there's a message. Embedded in the archive's core system. It's addressed to whoever breaks the encryption. Play it. A new hologram appeared, a human woman in a military uniform that Scarix didn't recognize. She was perhaps 50 years old, with steel gray hair and eyes that held absolutely no warmth. Greetings, she said in perfect Krillian, her translator flawless. If you're watching this, it means you've taken Veridor 3 and accessed our colonial archive. Congratulations. My name is Fleet Admiral Seraphine Cross, Terran Defense Command. What you found is Project Righteous Fury, humanity's response to aggressive expansion by hostile species. Scarix felt his scales tighten against his body, an involuntary fear response. Admiral Cross continued, you see, humanity has a peculiar approach to warfare. We don't believe in proportional response. We believe in overwhelming, decisive action. But we also believe in giving people chances. So when you invaded Veridor, we could have deployed these systems immediately. We could have turned your fleet into scrap metal and your soldiers into frozen corpses on the ice. She smiled, and it was a predator's smile. But that wouldn't have been educational. You needed to understand something fundamental about humanity. We don't just fight to win battles. We fight to ensure that aggressors never threaten us again. So we let you take Veridor. We let you think you'd won. We let you celebrate and claim our resources and broadcast your victory across your entire dominion. Admiral Cross leaned forward, her eyes seeming to stare directly at Scarix. And while you were celebrating, we were building. Every blueprint in this archive is now in production. Every weapon system, every ship design, every orbital platform, all of it is being manufactured at facilities across human space. We gave you Veridor to buy ourselves time. Time to activate protocols that have been in development since humanity first reached the stars. The display shifted, showing real-time footage that made Scarix's blood freeze. Massive shipyards in orbit around Earth, each one churning out vessels of war that dwarfed anything humanity had previously fielded. Weapons testing ranges where experimental systems vaporized targets with casual efficiency. Training facilities where human soldiers drilled with equipment that looked decades beyond what the Krillians had encountered. You have 4 weeks, Admiral Cross said. 4 weeks from the moment you access this message. That's how long we estimate it will take for our new fleet to reach full operational status. We're giving you this time for one reason. To evacuate Veridor 3 and withdraw from human space entirely. This is a bluff, Velroth hissed. It must be. But the Admiral wasn't finished. You're probably thinking this is a bluff. Let me provide you with some data to consider. The hologram shifted again, displaying classified Krillian military documents, fleet positions, defensive protocols, strategic weaknesses. Information that should have been impossible for humans to obtain. We've been inside your networks for 2 years, Cross explained. Every ship, every base, every communication relay. We know your force disposition down to the last soldier. We know your supply lines, your production capabilities, your strategic reserves. We know where your High Council meets and what they eat for breakfast. Scarix felt a wave of nausea roll through him. This was impossible. The Dominion's cybersecurity was impenetrable. In 28 days, the Admiral continued, if you haven't withdrawn from all human space, not just Veridor but every system you've seized or threatened, we will launch Operation Righteous Fury. And let me be very clear about what that means. We won't just drive you back. We won't just reclaim our territory. We will dismantle the Krillian Dominion piece by piece. We will destroy your military, cripple your economy, and ensure that you never again pose a threat to humanity or any other species. She paused, letting that sink in. This isn't revenge, High Commander Scarix. This is education. You need to learn that humanity doesn't start wars, but we most certainly finish them. The choice is yours. Withdraw peacefully and we'll allow your Dominion to survive, diminished but intact. Refuse and we'll show you what humans are truly capable of when we stop playing nice. The hologram flickered and died. In the silence that followed, Scarix became aware that his hands were trembling. Around him, Myron and Velroth stood frozen, their scales rippling with barely controlled fear. It's a bluff, Scarix said again, but his voice lacked conviction. It has to be. The classified data, Velroth said quietly. That was real. I recognized the codes. Only the High Council should have access to that information. Then we contact the Council immediately, Scarix decided. We inform them of this threat and... An alarm shrieked through the dome. Scarix's communicator buzzed urgently. High Commander. We're detecting multiple slip-space signatures at the edge of the system. Unknown configuration. They're massive, sir. Bigger than anything in our databases. Scarix ran for the command center, his officers racing behind him. When he reached the main tactical display, what he saw made his blood run cold. 27 ships had emerged from slipspace. But these weren't the vessels humanity had fielded during the war for Veridor. These were the ships from the Archive, sleek, predatory designs bristling with weapons batteries that dwarfed Krillian dreadnoughts. And at the center of the formation was a flagship so large it seemed to warp space around it. Incoming transmission, the communications officer reported, his voice shaking. On the view screen, Admiral Seraphine Cross appeared. She was standing on what was clearly a bridge, surrounded by crew members moving with professional precision. High Commander Scarix, she said pleasantly. I thought I'd deliver the message personally. Consider this a demonstration. You have 4 weeks starting now. I suggest you use them wisely. The transmission ended. Scarix stared at the fleet arrayed against him. Then, very slowly, he began to understand the magnitude of humanity's deception. They hadn't retreated. They'd been preparing. The Council's denial. The Krillian High Council chamber was a marvel of architectural intimidation. A vast spherical room where councilors floated on individual gravity platforms, arranged in concentric rings around a central holographic display. At the pinnacle sat Supreme Overlord Draxion, his scales a deep obsidian black that marked him as one of the ancient bloodlines. Scarix's transmission had interrupted an economic planning session, and Draxion's irritation was palpable even across light years. You dare interrupt the Council with tales of human threats? Draxion's voice boomed through the chamber. We are discussing the redistribution of Veridor's exotic matter, and you waste our time with... Supreme Overlord, with respect, this is no exaggeration, Scarix cut in, a breach of protocol that caused several councilors to hiss in outrage. The humans have deployed a fleet of unknown configuration. Their technology exceeds our intelligence estimates by orders of magnitude. Admiral Cross has given us an ultimatum. An ultimatum? Councillor Vexera, the Dominion's chief military strategist, actually laughed. The humans issue ultimatums now? The same humans who fled before our might like terrified hatchlings? Scarix transmitted the data from the archive, the footage of the human shipyards, the classified Krillian documents that Admiral Cross had displayed. For several minutes, the Council reviewed the information in silence. Finally, Strategic Counselor Morphix spoke. This is clearly a fabrication. A desperate bluff from a beaten enemy. The classified documents could have been obtained through a dozen different means: bribery, defection, lucky intercepts. As for their shipyards, we see construction facilities. That proves nothing. Any species can build ships, High Commander. Making those ships combat effective is another matter entirely. But the technology, Scarix began, is unproven, Draxion interrupted. For all we know, those vessels are hollow shells designed to intimidate us. The humans have shown us repeatedly that they lack the industrial capacity for true military production. Their defeat at Veridor demonstrates this conclusively. Supreme Overlord, they claim to have infiltrated our networks. A claim? Vexera snapped. Nothing more. If they truly had such access, why reveal it? Why not simply use that advantage? No, High Commander, this is psychological warfare and you've fallen for it. The humans are attempting to reclaim through fear what they lost through weakness. Scarix felt frustration building in his chest. Then explained the fleet currently in orbit around Veridor. 27 vessels of unprecedented size and apparent capability. That's not a fabrication. My sensors confirm their presence. A show of force, Counselor Zarn suggested. The elderly Krillian scales were nearly white with age. Impressive, perhaps, but ultimately meaningless. They paraded their new toys to frighten you. In 4 weeks, they expect us to simply abandon a strategically vital world based on threats and spectacle. Draxion's voice cut through the debate. High Commander Scarix, your nervousness is noted but misplaced. The humans are attempting to exploit your recent victory by undermining your confidence. Do not reward their manipulation with weakness. I recommend we call their bluff, Vexera added. Reinforce Veridor with 3 battle groups. Increase mining operations. Show the humans that their intimidation tactics are futile. If they truly had such overwhelming force, they would have used it already rather than giving us warnings and ultimatums. Scarix looked around the council chamber, seeing the same sentiment reflected in every face. They didn't believe him. Or perhaps they couldn't afford to believe him, because if the humans were telling the truth, it would mean acknowledging that the Dominion had made a catastrophic miscalculation. Supreme Overlord, Scarix tried one more time. I respectfully request permission to open diplomatic channels with the humans. To negotiate. Negotiate. Draxion's voice dripped with contempt. The Krillian Dominion does not negotiate with inferior species. We certainly don't negotiate with species we've just defeated. Your suggestion borders on treason, High Commander. The word hung in the air like a knife. I withdraw the suggestion, Supreme Overlord. See that you do. Now here are your orders. Maintain your position on Veridor. Continue resource extraction at maximum efficiency. If the human fleet makes any aggressive moves, you are authorized to respond with lethal force. But under no circumstances are you to abandon that world or show any sign of weakness to the humans. Is that understood? Yes, Supreme Overlord. The Dominion does not yield to threats, High Commander. Remember that. This council is adjourned. The transmission ended, leaving Scarix alone in the command center with Velroth and several junior officers. The old warrior's expression was grim. They're making a mistake, Velroth said quietly. Perhaps, Scarix replied. Or perhaps they're right and the humans are bluffing. But even as he said it, Scarix looked at the tactical display showing those 27 human vessels holding position at the system's edge. They hadn't moved, hadn't threatened. They just waited, like predators confident in their superiority. Deploy the defensive satellites, Scarix ordered. Bring the garrison to full alert. If the Council wants us to hold Veridor, then we hold Veridor. And if the humans attack? Scarix thought about Admiral Cross's cold smile, about the classified data she displayed so casually, about the sheer size of those vessels on his sensors. Then we discover whether this is a bluff or the beginning of the end. Over the following days, the reinforcements arrived, 3 full Krillian battle groups, nearly 100 ships in total. They took up defensive positions around Veridor 3, transforming the planet into one of the most heavily fortified positions in Dominion space. The human fleet didn't react. They simply maintained their position, a silent menace at the edge of detection range. Admiral Cross sent one more transmission, a simple message that Scarix dutifully forwarded to the Council. 25 days remaining. We strongly advise evacuation. The Council's response was equally brief, ignored. The Dominion stands firm. Scarix watched the clock count down and tried to ignore the growing sense of dread that coiled in his gut like a living thing. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a question kept recurring. What if the humans weren't bluffing? What if they'd learned from their defeat, adapted, evolved their warfare to something the Dominion couldn't counter? What if humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology at all, but their willingness to sacrifice everything for eventual victory? He pushed the thoughts aside and focused on his duty. The Dominion had spoken. Veridor would be held. Whatever the cost. The countdown. 21 days remaining. Commander Thrace Kellyan stood in the observation deck of the TDF Sovereign Reckoning, watching Veridor 3 through the reinforced viewports. The planet looked different now. Its domes glowed with the sickly orange light of Krillian atmospheric processors, and mining operations scarred the ice fields like infected wounds. "They're not leaving," Captain Mira Ashton observed, joining him at the viewport. The commander of the Wandering Star had transferred to the flagship for the operation's final planning phase. The Krillians have actually reinforced their position. 3 battle groups by our count. "I know," Thrace replied quietly. Admiral Cross's strategy assumed they'd be rational, that they'd cut their losses when faced with overwhelming force. The Admiral accounted for this possibility. Thrace turned to face Mira. She just hoped it wouldn't be necessary. Behind them, the bridge of the Sovereign Reckoning hummed with activity. The flagship was a marvel of engineering. 2 kilometers of reinforced hull, quantum-shielded reactor cores, and enough firepower to crack a small moon. And it was just one of 27 vessels in the Terran Defense Fleet's Righteous Fury battle group. Every single ship represented years of secret development, hidden manufacturing, and careful planning. They were the product of a hard lesson humanity had learned. Hope for peace but prepare for war. "Have you seen the new weapon system specs?" Mira asked. Thrace nodded. "The cascade disruptors are frightening. A single shot can chain react through multiple targets, destabilizing their quantum cores. It's efficient. Brutal. Very unhuman," Mira observed. "No," Thrace corrected gently. "Very human. We learned from the best teachers, every species that ever tried to wipe us out. The Krillians aren't the first to underestimate humanity, and they probably won't be the last. But maybe after this there will be fewer. 15 days remaining." High Commander Scarix reviewed the defensive preparations for the 100th time. The Krillian forces had transformed Veridor 3 into a fortress. Orbital defense platforms ringed the planet at 3 different altitudes. Minefields saturated the approach vectors. Energy shields covered every major installation. "It's the most fortified position we've ever established outside core Dominion space," Velroth reported. "Even if the humans have new technology, they'd be foolish to attack. The casualties would be enormous." "Perhaps that's what they're counting on," Scarix mused. "Perhaps they hope we'll reconsider when faced with the reality of such a battle." "Will we?" Scarix didn't answer immediately. The Council's position had hardened over the past 2 weeks. Daily dispatches from the capital spoke of the Dominion's pride, of the impossibility of yielding to human threats, of the necessity of maintaining strength in the face of intimidation. But Scarix had fought humans in the ice caverns of Veridor. He'd seen their determination, their creativity, their absolute refusal to surrender even when victory was impossible. These weren't a species that bluffed. "No," he said finally. "We won't reconsider. The Council has made that clear." Then what happens in 15 days? We find out if Admiral Cross is as ruthless as she appears. 10 days remaining. The entire Terran Defense Command gathered in a secure conference room aboard the Sovereign Reckoning. Admiral Seraphine Cross stood at the head of the table, her expression grave. "The Krillian Council has rejected every diplomatic overture," she announced. "They view our warnings as weakness, our restraint as proof of bluffing. They've reinforced Veridor 3 with significant military assets." "Then we proceed with Righteous Fury?" asked Admiral Jean Kazuma, commander of the 3rd Battle Group. "Not yet," Cross replied. "We're going to try one more approach. We're going to show them exactly what they're facing." She activated the holographic display, showing the Veridor system. "In 5 days we're going to conduct a demonstration. A surgical strike against a single target, one of their orbital defense platforms. We'll destroy it using the cascade disruptor at minimum power. They'll see the technology in action, see what we're capable of, and they'll have one final chance to evacuate." "And if they still refuse?" Thrace asked. Admiral Cross's expression hardened. "Then we demonstrate the full scope of human determination." 5 days remaining. The demonstration occurred at 0600 hours ship time. The human fleet maintained its position at the edge of the system while a single frigate, the Relentless Dawn, advanced toward Veridor 3's orbital space. Krillian sensors tracked it immediately. Scarix watched from his command center as warnings flooded in. Single human vessel approaching Sector 7, the tactical officer reported. Frigate class, approximately 300 meters in length. Weapon status? None detected. Shields are minimal. It's making no attempt at stealth or evasion, High Commander. Scarix frowned. Communications, hail them. The response came immediately. Captain Lysander Kane appeared on the view screen, a human male with sharp features and calm eyes. This is Captain Kane of the TDF Relentless Dawn. We're here to provide a demonstration of our weapons technology. Please be advised that we will be engaging Defense Platform 7 Delta. All personnel should evacuate the platform immediately. This is High Commander Scarix. You are in violation of Dominion space. Turn back or you will be destroyed. I'm afraid I can't do that, High Commander, but I strongly advise you to watch carefully. What you're about to see is our Cascade Disruptor operating at 5% power. We're providing this demonstration so you understand what full power looks like. The transmission ended. All weapons target that frigate, Scarix ordered. Fire on my command. The Relentless Dawn fired. The weapon was invisible, no beam, no projectile, just a ripple in space itself. It struck Defense Platform 7 Delta, and for a moment nothing happened. Then the platform's quantum core began to destabilize. Scarix watched in horror as the massive structure, 30,000 tons of military hardware, simply came apart. Not exploding, not melting, but disintegrating at the molecular level. The effect spread like a virus, consuming the platform from the point of impact outward, until nothing remained but a cloud of dissociated atoms. The entire event took 7 seconds. Estimated casualties? Velroth asked quietly. 200 Krillian personnel, the tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. All dead. We didn't even have time to order an evacuation. Another transmission from Captain Kane? That was 5% power, High Commander. At full power, that weapon can chain react through multiple targets. We could destroy your entire defensive grid in a matter of minutes. You have 5 days to evacuate Veridor 3. Please don't make us demonstrate further. The transmission ended. Scarix immediately contacted the High Council. This time, when he presented his report, the chamber was silent. They'd all seen the footage. They'd all watched Defense Platform 7 Delta cease to exist. It's a trick, Counselor Vexera said, but her voice lacked conviction. Some kind of sabotage. They must have infiltrated the platform. We've analyzed the data, Strategic Counselor Morphix interrupted. There was no sabotage. That was a genuine weapons discharge. The technology, it's beyond anything in our databases. Supreme Overlord Draxion stared at the frozen image of the dissipating platform. For the first time since Scarix had known him, the Supreme Overlord looked uncertain. How many platforms do we have around Veridor? Draxion asked quietly. 47, Supreme Overlord. And the human fleet has 27 ships. The mathematics were brutal. If each ship had multiple weapons of this type, we cannot yield, Draxion said finally. The Dominion cannot show weakness. If we surrender Veridor based on threats in one demonstration, every other species in the galaxy will see us as vulnerable. We'll face challenges on every border. Supreme Overlord, Scarix said carefully, if we don't withdraw they will destroy us. Not just at Veridor, everywhere. They've made their intentions clear. Then we will fight, Draxion declared. And we will win. The Dominion has faced extinction before. We've always survived through strength and determination. Order all available battle groups to Veridor. We'll show the humans that we cannot be intimidated. Scarix felt his scales go cold. Supreme Overlord, that's 15 battle groups. Nearly 600 ships. If they defeat us there. They won't, Draxion snapped. Because we won't let them. Because the alternative is unthinkable. Dismissed, High Commander. Prepare for battle. The transmission ended. Velroth looked at Scarix with ancient, knowing eyes. They're going to sacrifice everything to save face. I know, Scarix replied. Then we're doomed. Probably. Outside, in the cold vacuum of space, the human fleet waited with infinite patience. The countdown continued. The final hours. 0 hour -12. The Veridor system had become the most militarily concentrated point in known space. 15 Krillian battle groups surrounded the planet in overlapping defensive shells, 617 vessels ranging from corvettes to massive dreadnoughts. It was a force capable of conquering entire star systems, and it was all focused on defending one world against 27 human ships. On the bridge of the Sovereign Reckoning, Admiral Seraphine Cross reviewed the tactical situation one final time. Her senior officers gathered around the holographic display, their faces reflecting the weight of what was about to occur. "They actually did it," Captain Ashton murmured. "They brought their entire fleet." "Not quite entire," corrected Admiral Kazuma, studying the data. "Intelligence suggests they've kept reserve forces at their core worlds. But this is the majority of their offensive capability." Admiral Cross zoomed the display to show the Krillian formation. It was impressive: layers of interlocking fields of fire, redundant shield coverage, carefully positioned support vessels. Whoever had designed this defense knew their trade. "It won't matter," she said quietly. The officers looked at her. "They're fighting the last war," Cross explained. "They've arranged their forces to counter conventional weapons, conventional tactics. They're thinking in terms of firepower exchange ratios, shield penetration thresholds, fleet attrition. They still don't understand what we've built." Commander Thrace Kellyan stepped forward. "Admiral, permission to speak freely?" "Granted. What we're about to do, it will fundamentally change humanity's relationship with every other species in the galaxy. They'll fear us, maybe hate us. Is that what we want?" Admiral Cross was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of decades of service, of watching human colonies threatened, of memorial services for soldiers who died defending people who couldn't defend themselves. "Commander, 50 years ago humanity encountered the Zalthian Concordat. They were more advanced than us, more numerous, and they viewed humans as useful labor, nothing more. They enslaved 3 of our colonies before we drove them back. 20 years ago, the Verdani Collective decided our shipping lanes would make excellent piracy routes. We lost 30,000 civilians before we convinced them otherwise. And now the Krillians thought they could just take whatever they wanted." She looked around at her officers. "Every time we show mercy, every time we demonstrate restraint, someone new decides we're weak. They decide we're targets. So yes, Commander, what we're about to do will change how other species see us. They'll fear us. But fear breeds respect, and respect breeds peace. I'd rather be feared and left alone than loved and constantly defending against predators." "Even if it costs us our humanity?" Thrace asked. "We're not becoming monsters, Commander. We're becoming survivors. There's a difference." 0 hour -6. High Commander Scarix walked through the command center of the primary Veridor defense station, reviewing final preparations. Around him, Krillian warriors worked with disciplined efficiency, their movements sharp and purposeful. These were the Dominion's finest, veterans of a dozen conflicts, trained since hatching to fight and win. And yet, Scarix could see the doubt in their eyes. Velroth joined him at the central tactical display. "All ships report ready status. The Supreme Overlord has transmitted a message to all personnel. He's calling this the battle for Dominion pride." "How inspiring," Scarix said dryly. "You don't believe we can win?" It wasn't a question. Scarix considered lying, then decided his old friend deserved better. "I believe we'll fight bravely. I believe we'll follow our orders to the letter. But no, Velroth, I don't believe we can win. The humans have shown us a glimpse of their capabilities, and we're still treating this like a conventional battle. That's a fatal mistake." "Then why fight at all?" "Because the Council has ordered it. Because to do otherwise would be mutiny. And because..." Scarix trailed off. "Because perhaps we deserve this. We came to Veridor looking for easy conquest. We celebrated the retreat of people defending their homes. We mocked them, called them weak, treated their suffering as entertainment. Perhaps this is cosmic justice." Velroth's scales rippled with uncomfortable agreement. 0 hour -3. Aboard the Sovereign Reckoning, Admiral Cross opened a channel to the entire human fleet. "All ships, this is the Admiral. In 3 hours we will engage the Krillian Dominion fleet at Veridor 3. What we do here today will echo across the galaxy for generations. We're not just fighting for Veridor, we're fighting to ensure that no species ever again mistakes human restraint for human weakness." She paused, letting her words sink in. "I want to be clear about our rules of engagement. We will offer one final chance for evacuation. Any Krillian vessel that powers down weapons and withdraws will not be targeted. We're not here for genocide or revenge. We're here to teach a lesson, that humanity will not be pushed, will not be conquered, and will not tolerate aggression against our people." Another pause. "But for those who choose to fight, we will show no mercy. We will demonstrate the full capability of righteous fury. We will show them what happens when humanity stops holding back." All ships begin final pre-battle checks. Cross out. 0 hour -1. The transmission went out on all frequencies in every language. This is Admiral Seraphine Cross of the Terran Defense Fleet to all Krillian forces at Veridor 3. You have 1 hour to power down weapons and begin evacuation procedures. Any vessel that complies will be allowed to leave safely. Any vessel that does not comply will be considered hostile and engaged. This is your final warning. There will be no further communications. On the Krillian flagship Domination's Pride, Supreme Overlord Draxion himself was present, having arrived to personally oversee the battle. He listened to the human admiral's message and then issued his response. To all Krillian forces, there will be no evacuation. There will be no surrender. There will be no retreat. We are the Krillian Dominion and we do not yield to threats. All ships will maintain combat status. At the designated hour, if the humans approach, we will destroy them. For the glory of the Dominion. A chorus of affirmative responses flooded the communication channels. Scarix heard the Supreme Overlord's declaration and closed his eyes briefly. Then he opened them and turned to his crew. You heard the Supreme Overlord. All ships to full combat readiness. Prepare to engage. 0 hour -30. Thrace Kellion stood in the Defiant Horizon's ready room, looking at a photograph he'd kept from Veridor. A picture of New Anchorage during one of the rare summers, the domes glittering in the light of the twin suns, children playing in the streets that had been carved from ice. They never had to take it from us, he said aloud to the empty room. We would have shared. We would have negotiated. We would have found a peaceful solution. But the Krillians hadn't wanted peace. They'd wanted dominance. And now they would learn the cost of that choice. 0 hour -15. Admiral Cross stood at the center of the Sovereign Reckoning's bridge, her hands clasped behind her back. Around her, the crew worked in focused silence. They knew what was coming. They trained for this moment. All ships report ready status, Admiral, reported Commander Thrace from his position on the Defiant Horizon. Weapons systems online, added Admiral Kazuma. Defensive grids active, confirmed Captain Ashton. Admiral Cross looked at the tactical display one last time. 617 Krillian ships, ready to fight to the death to hold a world they'd stolen. 27 human ships, ready to teach them why that was a mistake. All ships, she said quietly. Execute Operation Righteous Fury. Show them what humanity has become. 0 hour. The battle began. Righteous Fury. The human fleet moved as one, accelerating from their holding position at the system's edge toward Veridor 3. They didn't spread out, didn't adopt defensive formations, didn't show any of the caution that conventional military doctrine would demand. They advanced in a perfect spearhead formation, the Sovereign Reckoning at the tip, straight toward the largest concentration of Krillian forces. They're insane, Warclaw Threnix muttered from his position aboard the Domination's Pride. 27 ships charging directly into our entire fleet? Supreme Overlord Draxion watched the tactical display with narrowed eyes. It's a psychological tactic. They want us to think they have some advantage, some trick that makes conventional tactics obsolete. Don't fall for it. All ships, prepare to engage at maximum range. The Krillian fleet opened fire first. Thousands of projectiles and energy beams lanced across the void, enough firepower to vaporize a moon. The targeting solutions were perfect, the coordination flawless. Every weapon in the Krillian arsenal focused on those 27 approaching ships. And every single shot stopped harmlessly against an invisible barrier 3 kilometers from the human vessels. What is that? Velroth demanded from his station on Scarix's command platform. That's not standard shielding technology. The technical analysis officer was frantically scanning the readings. It's a quantum displacement field. The weapons aren't hitting the ships, they're being redirected into parallel dimensional space. The energy just vanishes. Scarix felt his blood run cold. Can we penetrate it? Unknown High Commander. We'd need to concentrate fire, try to overwhelm the field's capacity. Do it. All weapons focus fire on the lead vessel. Maximum power. The Krillian fleet concentrated its entire output on the Sovereign Reckoning. The space around the flagship blazed with unleashed energy, a storm of destruction that should have reduced the ship to its component atoms. The Sovereign Reckoning didn't even slow down. Return fire, Admiral Cross ordered calmly. The human fleet opened fire. The Cascade disruptors fired in unison, 27 weapons unleashing their full power simultaneously. The effect was catastrophic. The weapons didn't target individual ships, they targeted the quantum foam of spacetime itself. Each shot created a cascading destabilization that chained from vessel to vessel, destabilizing the very forces that held matter together. Krillian ships didn't explode. They didn't burn. They simply ceased to exist, their matter breaking down into constituent particles and dispersing into space. The first wave of fire eliminated 63 Krillian vessels in 4 seconds. Evasive maneuvers. Scarix screamed, but it was too late. The human fleet's targeting was perfect, their weapons reach unlimited by conventional constraints. Ships at the far edge of the Krillian formation dissolved just as readily as those in close proximity. All ships scatter. Supreme Overlord Draxion ordered. Break formation random evasion patterns. The second wave of human fire eliminated another 72 ships. Aboard the Defiant Horizon, Thrace watched the tactical display with a mixture of awe and horror. The technology Project Righteous Fury had developed was working exactly as designed. Perfectly, efficiently, devastatingly. Enemy forces attempting to withdraw, his tactical officer reported. Let them, Thrace ordered. Any ship powering down weapons and fleeing the system is not to be engaged. Target only vessels maintaining combat status. The same order echoed across the human fleet. This wasn't genocide. This was precision. The Krillian fleet was disintegrating. Ships that tried to flee were allowed to go. Ships that continued fighting were systematically destroyed. The choice was clear and the consequences immediate. On the Domination's pride, chaos reigned. We've lost over 200 ships. Threnix reported, his voice breaking. Supreme Overlord, we must withdraw. Never. Draxion roared. All ships, continue engagement. Find a weakness, concentrate fire. There is no weakness. Scarix's voice cut across the channel from his position on the defense station. Supreme Overlord, they're toying with us. This isn't a battle, it's an execution. Give the evacuation order before there's nothing left to evacuate. I will not. A cascade disruptor round struck the Domination's pride. The massive dreadnought, pride of the Krillian fleet, began to break apart. Emergency containment fields struggled to maintain integrity as the ship's quantum core destabilized. Draxion had just enough time to register what was happening before the bridge section separated from the main hull. All ships, this is High Commander Scarix. Scarix transmitted on all frequencies, making a decision that would either save his people or result in his execution. Immediate evacuation order. All vessels, power down weapons and withdraw from the system. This is not a request, this is a command. Surrender or die. Across the Krillian fleet, commanders made their choices. Most powered down their weapons and began retreating. Some, either too proud or too committed to Dominion doctrine, continued fighting. The human fleet methodically destroyed every vessel that maintained combat status. The battle, if it could even be called that, lasted 18 minutes. When it was over, 421 Krillian ships had been destroyed. 196 had successfully evacuated the system. The rest were either disabled or had surrendered. Veridor 3 floated in space, its Krillian garrison silent and still. Admiral Cross opened a channel to the planet's surface. Krillian forces on Veridor 3, this is Admiral Cross. You have 12 hours to evacuate. After that time we will reclaim the planet. You may take personal belongings but no military equipment or seized resources. Any attempt to sabotage installations will be met with immediate response. Do you understand? From the surface, Scarix's voice came through, tired and defeated. We understand, Admiral. We will comply. High Commander Scarix, one more thing. Yes. Take a message to your High Council. Tell them that humanity doesn't start wars. But we end them. Tell them that Veridor is just one world, and what happened here is just a demonstration. If the Krillian Dominion ever threatens human space again, any human world, any human ship, any human citizen, we will not stop at one system. We will dismantle your entire empire. Are we clear? Crystal clear, Admiral. Then go. And don't come back. 3 days later, the human colonial fleet returned to Veridor 3. Thrace stood on the bridge of the Defiant Horizon as they approached New Anchorage. The domes still stood, though they'd need extensive repairs to make them habitable again. The mines would need clearing. The infrastructure would need restoration. But it could be done. Veridor could be reclaimed. Admiral Cross is requesting your presence aboard the Sovereign Reckoning, his communications officer reported. Thrace made his way to the flagship, where he found Admiral Cross in her ready room, looking out a viewport at the planet below. Commander Kellyan, she greeted him. I wanted to speak with you personally. Ma'am? You asked me before the battle whether demonstrating such overwhelming force would cost us our humanity. I've been thinking about that question. She turned to face him. I don't have a good answer. We did what we needed to do to protect our people. We gave the Krillians every chance to withdraw peacefully. We warned them, demonstrated our capabilities, offered surrender. And still they chose to fight. What happened was their choice as much as ours. I know, ma'am. But I also know that we can't become what we fought against. We can't become conquerors. We can't become the species that others fear will destroy them on a whim. She gestured to Veridor. That's why we're returning this world to civilian authority immediately. That's why we're not pursuing the Krillian fleet to their home systems. That's why we're going to offer humanitarian aid to Krillian survivors. Thrace raised an eyebrow. We're helping them? After they tried to take our world? Because that's what humans do, Commander. We fight when we must. We destroy when there's no other choice. But when the fighting's done, we rebuild. We heal. We show mercy. That's what separates us from the Krillians. We remember that our enemies are people too, even when they forget it themselves. The galaxy is going to talk about what happened here for a long time, Thrace observed. Let them talk, Admiral Cross replied. Let every species from here to the galactic rim know what happens when you threaten humanity. But also let them know what happens after. That we're not monsters, we're not conquerors, we're just a species that refuses to be victimized. She pulled up a holographic display showing intelligence reports from across known space. Already, species that had been eyeing human colonies with interest were pulling back. Trade negotiations that had been stalled for months were suddenly moving forward. Diplomatic channels that had been cold were warming up. Fear and respect, Thrace murmured. Exactly. And hopefully, in time, understanding. We don't want to rule the galaxy, Commander. We just want to live in it safely. 6 months later at Krillian High Council chambers. A new Supreme Overlord had been elected, Councillor Morphix, whose more cautious approach had gained support in the aftermath of the disaster. Scarix stood before the council, no longer a high commander but a strategic advisor, one of the few military officers to survive with his reputation intact. The humans have kept their word, Morphix announced to the assembled councillors. They've returned Veridor to civilian control. They've withdrawn their battle groups to defensive positions. And, surprisingly, they've offered medical aid and resource support to help rebuild our fleet. Why? Councillor Vexera asked. After defeating us so thoroughly, why help us? Scarix answered. Because that's what makes them dangerous, Councillor. They're not interested in domination. They're interested in coexistence. They'll destroy you if you threaten them, but they'll help you rebuild if you make peace. It's unusual. It's weakness, one of the younger councillors spat. No, Morphix said firmly. It's strength. True strength. The kind that doesn't need to prove itself constantly. The humans have shown us that they can destroy us whenever they choose. Now they're showing us that they prefer not to. We would be wise to learn from this. The council debated long into the night, but the conclusion was inevitable. The Krillian Dominion would seek peace with humanity. Not because they wanted to, but because the alternative was extinction. On Veridor 3, 1 year after the reclamation, the domes of New Anchorage glittered once more under the twin suns. Children played in the streets, their laughter echoing off the ice. Miners descended into the shafts, extracting exotic matter that would fuel human expansion for decades. And in the central square, a memorial had been erected. It listed the names of everyone who died defending Veridor, soldiers and civilians alike. But at the base of the memorial an inscription read, "We did not seek this war. We did not desire this victory. But when peace was denied us, we proved that humanity will always fight for home. May this memorial remind us both of the cost of war and the value of peace. May those who would threaten us remember, we retreat to reload." Thrace stood before the memorial, accompanied by some of the original colonists who'd returned to rebuild their world. One of them, an elderly woman named Sarah Chin, placed flowers at the base of the monument. "Do you think it's over?" she asked Thrace. "Do you think they'll leave us alone now?" Thrace looked up at the sky, where the distant stars twinkled with infinite possibility and infinite danger. "For now," he said. "And maybe for a long time. We've made our point. But humanity will never truly be safe as long as we're among the stars. There will always be another Krillian Dominion, another species that thinks we're weak, another conflict we didn't want. Then why do it? Why keep exploring, keep expanding, keep putting ourselves in danger?" Thrace smiled. "Because that's what humans do, Sarah. We explore. We dream. We reach for the impossible. And when someone tries to stop us, we prove that they made a terrible mistake. He gestured to the thriving city around them. This is what we fought for. Not just this planet but the right to be here. The right to make homes among the stars. The right to exist without asking permission. And now, because of what happened here, fewer species will question that right. Sarah nodded slowly. The aliens celebrated the human retreat. Until the humans came back, Thrace finished. Let it become a lesson. Let it echo across the galaxy. Humanity can be pushed. We can be beaten back. We can even be made to retreat. He looked at the memorial, at the names of the fallen, at the children playing in the streets they died to protect. But we always come back. And when we do, we're stronger than before. In the years that followed, the Battle of Veridor, as it came to be known, would be studied in military academies across 100 worlds. The Cascade Disruptor technology would be refined, improved and eventually shared, carefully, with allied species. The Krillian Dominion would become humanity's most reliable trading partner, their former animosity transformed into grudging respect. And in the cold reaches of space, other species looking at human colonies with covetous eyes would remember what happened when the Krillians made that mistake. They would remember that humans fight differently. Not with pride or glory but with planning and patience. Not with immediate overwhelming force, but with strategic retreats followed by overwhelming responses. They would remember that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their refusal to stay beaten. And across the galaxy, a new understanding emerged. You could fight humanity. You could even defeat them in battle. But you could never, ever make them surrender. Because humanity always came back.